He belonged to the family. "You clear away the tea for me, Janet," said Mother. "Daddy and I have something important to settle." Janet pricked up her ears. "What is it, Mother? May I listen, or is it secret?" "Oh, no, it's not secret," said her mother, "but it's rather exciting. Daddy's going to buy a lorry." "A lorry?" said Janet. "Whatever for?" "To take round the logs, of course," said Mother. "Old Brown is slow now, and can only put a small load of logs. Daddy wants to take 3 times as many out at a time, and so he thinks he'll buy a lorry." "Brownie will be pleased," said Janet. "He will have a nice rest in the field." "Oh, I shall sell him," said Daddy, raising his head from the advertisements he was looking at. Janet stared in horror. "Daddy! Sell Brownie? Our dear old horse? Why, I never remember a time without him. Oh, Daddy, you can't sell Brownie." "I've had a very good offer for him already," said Daddy, "from Mr. Lucas down at the farm." Janet stared at her father and mother as if she couldn't believe her ears. "You can't sell old Brownie," she said again, with tears in her eyes. "Mother, he's one of the family. He really is. I love him. So does Paul." "Well, we're fond of him too," said her father, "but we have to be sensible about things, Janet. I need a lorry. Mr. Lucas will buy Brownie. It all fits nicely." "It doesn't! It doesn't!" cried Janet. "You know Mr. Lucas is horrid. Oh, Daddy, I can't believe it. Does Paul know?" Paul was her brother. He was out shutting up the hens and having a word with Brownie in his old stable. "No, Paul doesn't know yet," said Mother. Janet put down the cup she was carrying and rushed to the door. "I'm going to tell him," she said. "He'll beg and beg you not to sell dear old Brownie." The door slammed behind her. She ran out into the cold night. "Paul! Paul, where are you?" "Here, with Brownie," shouted Paul. In half a minute his sister was flying in at the stable door. She caught his arm. "Paul, did you know Daddy was buying a lorry and selling Brownie to Mr. Lucas?" Paul whistled. "No? Oh, he can't do that. Sell our Brownie? Why, he'd be absolutely miserable. He loves us." "Just at Christmas time too," said Janet, sniffing her tears away. "Can't you beg Daddy not to do such a dreadful thing?" Paul rubbed Brownie's velvety nose, and the horse nuzzled against him, pushing gently. He loved this boy and girl. They were always good to him, always kind. They had often ridden on him on the way to school when their father had taken his loaded cart of logs to deliver round the town. They were his friends. Daddy wouldn't alter his mind. "No," he said, "and please don't be silly over this. I'm not going to turn down a good offer for Brownie. And I do want that lorry. In fact, I've ordered it. It can take 3 times as great a load as Brownie can pull." "Oh, Daddy, after all the years of good work Brownie's done for you, I think it's dreadful to send him to that horrid Mr. Lucas," said Paul. "You could easily keep him to pull the little cart when you want it. He'll still use it for odd things." "Stop talking about it," said Daddy, getting cross. "I've made up my mind, and when I do that, I don't change it." So, there was no more to be said. The lorry was to arrive after Christmas, and Brownie was to be walked down to Mr. Lucas. It quite spoilt the excitement of Christmas week for the 2 children. They spent all their spare moments with Brownie. They rode to school on him every day, and when he came to the school gate, he always stopped. Then they slipped off his broad back, rubbed his nose, and watched him clip-clop away with a little cart loaded with logs behind him. "You won't be able to ride on Brownie tomorrow when you go to school," said their mother. "Daddy is starting out later, hoping the snow would have melted a little. It's so hard for Brownie to pull the cart over that hard snow up the hill." "Oh dear, and it's our last day this term," said Janet, disappointed. We break up tomorrow. After Christmas, Brownie will be gone, and we shan't be able to ride him any more. I did so want to ride on him for the last time tomorrow." "You can catch the bus with me," said her mother. "I'm going Christmas shopping tomorrow, and I want to go early. We'll all catch the bus together and leave Daddy to see himself off." So the next day, Janet, Paul, and their mother set off together to catch the bus. "Mind how you go," said Mother. "It's terribly slippery today." So it was. They slithered and slipped down the path to the little front gate and made their way carefully to the bus stop. The bus came up and they all caught it. The children got out of the school gate and Mother went on to the shops in the bus. At home, their father finished looking through his order book, wrote a few letters, and then looked out of the window. The sun was out. Perhaps the hard snow up the hill would have melted. He would go out, load his cart, and get Brownie. So out he went, putting on his thick overcoat. Just outside the door, he slipped and fell heavily. A dreadful pain shot through his right leg. He lay there groaning for a minute or two, and then tried to pull himself up. But another pain came, and he fell back. "Oh, my leg must have been broken," he thought. "Oh, what shall I do? There's no one in the house. My wife's gone off with the children and won't be back for hours. Nobody will hear me if I call." He was so cold and in such pain that he called as loudly as he could, though he knew there was no one to hear him. "Help! Help!" No one came. He called again. Then he stopped. What was the good of wasting his strength in shouting when he knew nobody could hear him? But somebody had heard him. Old Brownie, up in his stable, heard his master shouting. He raised his head. He was already puzzled because no one had come to fetch him and fasten him to the cart. He backed out of his stall and turned himself round to face the door. He knew quite well how to open it. He nuzzled against the latch, trying to lift it with his mouth. And at last he did. He pushed the door. It swung open, and he went out into the snowy paddock. He could see no one about. He went to the gap in the hedge and jumped through it. Then he trotted cautiously to the front gate of the little house where his master lived. He put his big brown head over the gate. He saw his master lying on the ground. How astonishing! Brownie whinnied a little. The man looked up and saw him. "Brownie, you got out by yourself, but you can't help me, old fellow," he said feebly. Brownie pushed against the gate, but it wouldn't open. He whinnied again, looking at his master. What could he do? Then he turned and lumbered away up the road. His master groaned again. Even his horse had left him. But old Brownie had had an idea. There was something wrong with his master. His mistress wasn't there. The children had gone to school. He must fetch one of them. He climbed the snowy hill, almost falling himself. It was so slippery. He came to the top and went along to the main road. He knew the way quite well. He would go to the school, that place where the children slid off his back each morning and disappeared. He came at last to the school gates. They were open. He went in, and his great hooves made a muffled clip-clopping sound over the snowy playground. He stopped at the school door. It was shut. He walked round the building and came to a window. He knew about windows. He had sometimes looked in them before on his rounds with the cart. So he looked in this one now. But the room was empty. He went on to the next window, and he looked in that one, his breath steaming the glass so that he couldn't very well see inside. A class of children were at work in the room. Paul and Janet were there. Paul looked up at the window, and he gave such a shout that everyone in the room jumped violently. "Look! It's an old brownie!" shouted Paul. He leapt up and went to the window. Janet ran too. "He's by himself. He hasn't got the cart. He hasn't even a bridle on," said Paul in wonder. He opened the window and Brownie put his great head in. "Why have you come, Brownie? Why aren't you with Dad?" said Brownie wisely. Paul looked worried. "Miss James, please, may I go with Brownie? Something must have happened to my father. He should be with him." It wasn't long before Paul and Janet were up on Brownie's back, going as quickly as they dared over the slippery snow to their home. And there, on the front path, frozen cold and groaning in pain, they found their poor father. They dragged him carefully indoors. Janet ran for the doctor. Paul got hot water bottles and a hot drink for his father. Then the doctor came and was soon busy setting the broken leg. The children watched anxiously, helping all they could. And somebody else watched too. Old Brownie watched through the window, wondering what was happening. The doctor saw the big brown head there and smiled. "That horse of yours is as concerned about you as much as the children are," he told his patient. "Did you hear that he actually walked all the way up to the school and fetched them back here to help you? A wonderful old fellow he must be." "He is," said the children's father, turning his head to see Brownie's face at the window. "He heard me calling and somehow got out of his stable to come to me. He put his head over the gate and saw I was in trouble, and off he went. I shall never, never part with old Brownie." Well, what do you think of that? The children cried out in delight. "Daddy, do you mean that? Aren't you going to get the lorry then?" "Yes, of course, but I'm going to keep Brownie as well now. He'll run the cart when your mother wants it for her shopping and when she wants to take eggs and vegetables to the market. He shall be hers and yours. Can't sell him now, the faithful old friend." "Well, now Christmas will be lovely," said Janet happily. "I felt as if it was all spoilt, but it isn't. Oh, dear old Brownie. Shall I give him an extra big feed, Daddy?" "Yes, all the oats he can eat," said her father, smiling. "And a special pat from me. Whatever made me think we could do without Brownie?" So, Christmas was very happy after all. The children had a beautiful Christmas tree, and after tea on Christmas Day they lit all the candles on it. Brownie came to see. They opened the window for him to put his big brown nose through. He stood there happily and watched the children playing round the tree. There was a present for him, of course. "Here you are, a carrot from me and an apple from Paul," said Janet. And Brownie munched them hungrily. He belonged to the family. He was happy. He still belongs. I know that, because I see Janet and Paul riding him every Saturday.